Today, London isn't just sunny, it feels unusually tense. There's a heaviness in the atmosphere, a quiet frustration that's been building for weeks. It's not loud or chaotic, but it's there, felt in conversations, in the way people look at one another, in the slow movement of a crowd that's growing by the hour. Something has shifted. People are no longer just disappointed. They're fed up. And they're showing it not through slogans, but through numbers. Outside number 10 Downing Street, the Union Jack flies high, not in celebration, but as a signal, a sign of protest, a symbol of discontent.
Get your
The turnout is larger than anyone expected. What began as scattered frustration has gathered into something more focused and deliberate. There is one clear demand now. Prime Minister Keir Starmer must resign. 12 months ago, this idea would have sounded far-fetched. Today, it's the message echoing through central London. And it's being delivered not by fringe groups or political diehards, but by people who've had enough. If this is the version of grown-up politics that was promised, then something has clearly gone wrong. Because the trust is gone, and those who were once silent are now ready to speak.
How many more children are dying in our streets, Prime Minister? How many more children? How many more children, Prime Minister? Are we going to do something?
Time to change, Starmer.
Come on, it's needed. How many more children? Is it mine next?
Keir Starmer built his political image with precision. Every speech, every headline, every policy was designed to present a figure of calm authority, measured, competent and principled. But the longer he remains in power, the more that image begins to crack. What lies beneath is a leadership style that feels distant and uninspired. At a time when the country needed bold direction, what it received instead was a quiet, procedural approach, safe, calculated and detached. When people searched for vision, they found technical language. When they hoped for moral clarity, they were met with indecision. His leadership has become less about connecting with people and more about managing optics. The passion that once surrounded his campaign has faded into something that feels cold and overly cautious. Starmer governs like a bureaucrat, not a leader, checking boxes, issuing statements, but rarely showing conviction.
Crime soaring, antisocial behaviour going up, yet neighbourhood policing going down. Better than yet more tax rises in the middle of a cost of living crisis. Because if the answer to that is yes, Britain deserves better, there's something you can do about it, which is go out on May the 4th, Thursday, May the 4th, and vote Labour.
Campaigning as a man of principle, he positioned himself as the successor to a movement rooted in justice and defiance. But after securing the position, that image was quickly abandoned. The fire that once energized his base was replaced with political convenience. What remains now is a version of leadership that feels manufactured, tidy on the outside, hollow within. The transformation didn't take long. After winning the Labour leadership, Starmer wasted no time in distancing himself from the very movement that helped him rise. The ideals of the Corbyn era, however polarising, had given the party a distinct identity, a clear sense of purpose. That identity has now been dismantled.
Except I earn a lot of money in the job I am now in. But when I grew up, my dad was a tool maker. He worked in a factory. It's true. My mum was a nurse, and actually we couldn't make ends meet, which actually isn't a laughing matter. We couldn't make ends meet.
Instead of evolving those ideas, Starmer discarded them entirely. What replaced them was a diluted version of centrism, polished, inoffensive, and ultimately forgettable. Labour no longer feels like a movement. It feels like a corporate brand. The language has changed, the energy has vanished, and with it, so has the soul of the party. Supporters defend this shift as competence, but competence alone doesn't inspire. Competence doesn't fix a broken system or lift people out of despair, and when competence is defined by inaction, neutrality, and vague messaging, it begins to look a lot like complacency. Starmer's public appearances are filled with empty statements, phrases that seem carefully crafted to avoid offence rather than to convey meaning. He pledges unity while deepening divides. He promises change while reinforcing the status quo. His politics feel less like leadership and more like corporate communication. Safe, generic, and hard to remember. What's left is a party adrift, trading bold goals for cautious language, and the people watching, once hopeful, are now simply confused.
The Cobra meeting was to coordinate our response to the disorder, and I made it very clear on a number of occasions that those involved will feel the full force of the law. So we coordinated, we went through some of the numbers. Over 400 people now have been arrested, 100 have been charged, some in relation to online activity, and a number of them are already in court. And I'm now expecting substantive sentencing before the end of this week. That should send a very powerful message to anybody involved, either directly or online, that you are likely to be dealt with within a week, and that nobody, but nobody, should be involving themselves in this disorder.
Keir Starmer's version of leadership has left the Labour Party stuck in limbo, technically functioning but lacking any real sense of direction. It's not just the public feeling it, even within the party there's growing discomfort. Behind closed doors, MPs and advisors whisper concerns they won't say out loud. They see the cracks, they feel the unease, but few are willing to speak up. The leadership style is overly focused on image, while action takes a back seat. Starmer has turned political messaging into a marketing strategy, replacing movement with management and conviction with branding. Labour has gone from a party of bold ideas to one obsessed with optics, more concerned with how it looks than what it does. The results speak for themselves. The energy is gone, the vision is missing. What remains is a logo, a slogan, a leader who avoids scrutiny and answers questions with vague, rehearsed sound bites. There's no fire, only fatigue. This isn't what people voted for, and it's not what the country needs. What once stood as a symbol of working-class resilience and progressive ambition now drifts silently, without purpose, without passion, and without a clear path forward. Outside Downing Street, the voices calling for change are not extremists or political outliers. They are everyday people. Nurses, veterans, shopkeepers, students. These are individuals who once trusted the system to work for them, who believed promises would be kept, but after years of being let down, they've decided to show up and speak out. They don't wave flags out of blind nationalism. These flags represent frustration, a last resort for those who feel unheard. They're standing in the streets not to disrupt, but to demand honesty. What connects them is not ideology, but a shared sense of being ignored by those in power. People are tired of politicians who speak in circles and avoid real answers. They're tired of policies that sound good on paper but fall apart in real life. The crowd outside Number 10 isn't angry for the sake of it. They've simply run out of patience. The current leadership appears increasingly out of touch, unwilling or unable to grasp the consequences of its decisions. As the cost of living rises, as services falter, as trust in institutions fades, the call for accountability grows louder. Silence is no longer an option. People have reached their limit and they're not backing down. Describing Labour's current platform as a policy agenda might be generous. At best, it's a collection of vague positions that shift depending on the audience. There is no clear foundation, just a flexible set of talking points shaped by headlines and polling data. One moment, there's tough talk on borders. The next, a sudden alignment with corporate interests. Then, just as quickly, declarations about social justice, all within the same week. It's political shapeshifting with no consistent thread. What's left is a message that feels calculated, not principled. Crafted to please, not to lead. This is not what leadership looks like. It's not about conviction. It's about staying one step ahead of criticism, avoiding hard stances, and waiting to see which way the wind blows before speaking. Leadership means standing for something, even when it's difficult. Instead, the current approach looks more like damage control. Policies are molded to fit the moment, not shaped by long-term goals or core values. It's not bravery, it's survival politics. Cautious, risk-averse, and driven by fear of backlash. And people are beginning to notice. The inconsistencies aren't subtle, they're obvious, and they're exhausting to follow. The gap between Keir Starmer and the public is growing wider, not just because of policy, but because of his refusal to face real questions. Press briefings are tightly controlled. Interviews are rare, and when he does appear, answers are rehearsed and deliberately vague. This isn't caution, it's avoidance, and it's become a pattern. Instead of direct engagement, the leadership prefers to speak through carefully worded statements. Starmer dodges difficult topics with polished phrases that reveal little and reassure even less. Surrounding him is a team that feels indistinguishable from one another, advisors who echo the same risk-averse strategy, crafted not to connect with the public, but to avoid offending anyone. It's politics by committee, where every decision is filtered through layers of messaging experts. But there's a cost to this approach. It drains the energy from public debate. It turns engagement into fatigue. People aren't just uninspired, they're tired of trying to decode what their leaders actually stand for. Leadership is not about hiding, it's about stepping into the discomfort, confronting hard truths and being present when the public demands answers. Right now, that presence is missing, and the silence is starting to feel louder than any speech. The discontent isn't only coming from outside. Inside Labour, pressure is quietly building. Party members, MPs, and long-time supporters are growing restless, but few dare to speak out. There's an unspoken fear that questioning the leadership will be seen as disloyalty, or worse, political suicide.
Such weak political antennae.
Right.
Now, yes, there are some far-right people involved in those skirmishes, and certainly no one is condoning that behaviour. But what about the eruption of violence in Leeds,
Right.
for example? What about the behaviour in Manchester Airport, where, to the best of my knowledge, those thugs, those hooligans that assaulted police officers have still not been charged? While the police officer themselves concerned, well, at least one of them has been suspended and is quite likely to lose his career over what happened. People up and down the country are so frustrated by what they see as one rule for them, one rule for us.
Yeah.
And these divisions are not being stoked by the far right. They're certainly not being helped by the far right, but they are felt very, very deeply by an awful lot of peace-loving people who simply cannot believe.
Behind closed doors, concerns are voiced in whispers. There's talk of a party that feels leaderless, adrift without a strong moral or strategic compass. Starmer is seen not as a unifier, but as someone who avoids hard choices and shifts blame. The frustration is palpable, yet it rarely surfaces in public. This fear-driven silence is dangerous. A healthy party encourages debate. It thrives on accountability. But under the current leadership, Labour has grown cautious to the point of paralysis. Bold ideas are shelved, internal critics are sidelined, and the people most affected by these decisions, voters, are left wondering who really speaks for them. A party that once offered hope now avoids risk. It follows polls instead of principles. And as the leadership tries to project unity, the reality is a growing unease that no one wants to name out loud. Among Labour's most untouchable promises is its commitment to full decarbonisation. The ambition is bold, but the execution raises serious questions. Questions the government seems unwilling to answer. As energy bills continue to rise and industries struggle under the weight of new regulations, many are asking who is actually benefiting from this plan. In principle, a greener future is a goal worth pursuing. But in practice, the current strategy appears rushed and poorly balanced. Domestic oil and gas projects are being abandoned without a reliable replacement. In their place, Britain is becoming increasingly dependent on foreign supply chains for everything from solar panels to rare earth minerals. The country's energy security is being handed over to international markets, some of which are unstable, politically hostile, or environmentally questionable themselves. Meanwhile, the public is left to absorb the fallout. Higher utility costs, reduced industrial output, and growing economic uncertainty. The transition to clean energy should be responsible and strategic, not reactive. But under Labour's current trajectory, it feels more like a political slogan than a serious, sustainable plan. And as the pressure mounts, voters are no longer asking if the goal is right, they're asking how it's going to work and who will pay the price. The push toward net zero is one of the most expensive and transformative policies in modern British history. Yet, when it comes to the details, how much it will cost, who will pay, and what happens when things go wrong, Parliament has gone quiet. Government data suggests the full cost of reaching net zero could run into the trillions by 2050. But ministers treat these numbers like radioactive material, refusing to discuss them openly, dodging specifics and offering only vague reassurances. Just yesterday, the Energy Secretary faced direct questions about household costs, grid upgrades and energy reliability, and responded with little more than platitudes. What happens when the wind doesn't blow? When the sun doesn't shine? Who covers the shortfall? Who pays for the infrastructure overhaul? These aren't hostile questions. They're the basic concerns of any functioning democracy. But asking them in today's political climate is treated as heresy. To question the plan is to be labelled regressive. Parliament has become an echo chamber, where uncomfortable truths are ignored and real debate is replaced by groupthink. This silence is no longer harmless. It's become a barrier to progress. A democracy that punishes doubt and silences scrutiny doesn't move forward. It simply drifts, unchallenged and unprepared. Please like and subscribe to the channel for more updates like this. Watch more videos here.